In 16th century northern Japan, temperatures reached 20 degrees below zero, and snow covered castles for 3 months straight. Thousands of soldiers froze to death every season, but the samurai not only survived, they trained harder, fought in 15-kilogram suits of armor, and kept fortresses functioning in the dead of winter. What did these warriors know about extreme survival that our modern armies took centuries to learn? The answer goes far beyond warm clothing. It's a combination of science, philosophy, and secret techniques that transformed the frozen hell into a war advantage. Japanese winters were relentlessly brutal, especially in the mountainous regions of Tohoku and the plains of Hokkaido, where blizzards could last for weeks and the biting wind would pierce through any ordinary fabric, while peasants locked themselves in their homes, burning whatever they could to keep warm. The samurai needed to maintain training routines, night patrols, and be ready for battle at any moment. The first crucial adaptation was in the armor itself, which, contrary to popular belief, was not just protection against swords, but a complete survival system. Winter armor had inner layers made of raw silk and densely woven cotton that created air pockets between the body and the metal plates. This thermal insulation technique was surprisingly advanced, similar to the principle of modern thermal clothing. The samurai discovered that several thin layers retain heat much better than one thick layer, so they wore up to 5 layers of kimono under their armor. The innermost layer was always silk, because this material absorbs up to 30% of its own weight in moisture, without appearing wet, keeping the skin dry even during intense physical exertion. The real secret lay in the spaces between these layers, which could not be too tight or too loose, a balance that each warrior learned through years of experience. Winter nutrition was another fundamental pillar, and here they developed an impressive nutritional science centuries before modern medicine understood these concepts. During the cold months, the human body expends up to 40% more energy just to maintain body temperature, so the samurai needed extremely high-calorie diets. The solution came through miso, a fermented soybean paste that would become one of Japan's most important foods. A bowl of miso soup in the morning provided complete proteins, essential fats, and crucial salt to maintain blood pressure in low temperatures. The samurai also consumed impressive amounts of brown rice mixed with barley, sometimes eating up to 6 bowls a day during winter campaigns. This rice was specially prepared, soaked in concentrated green tea, which added antioxidants and natural caffeine. Dried and smoked fish, especially salmon and herring, were consumed in large quantities because the omega-3 fats help the body generate internal heat. One fascinating technique was the consumption of natto, fermented soybeans, that provided vitamin K, essential for blood clotting. Important because cold wounds bleed more and heal worse. Samurai castles were designed with specific architectural ingenuity to withstand harsh winters. The wooden floors were always raised at least 60 centimeters off the ground, creating an empty space that acted as natural thermal insulation. Double walls filled with straw and rammed earth created an efficient thermal barrier. What really made the difference were the irori, square hearths embedded in the floor where oak charcoal burned constantly, producing intense heat for hours. The smoke rose through an ingenious system of wooden beams in the ceiling, positioned to smoke and preserve meats and fish hung there, taking advantage of every gram of heat produced. In larger castles like Matsumoto and Hirosaki, there were channels under the floor through which hot air circulated from central furnaces. Primitive but effective version of central heating that would only be reinvented in the West centuries later. And you? Could you survive the extreme samurai training methods in the freezing cold? Leave your opinion in the comments and tell us if you would take on this challenge. Physical training during winter was where the samurai truly excelled, because they not only continued training in the cold, they purposefully intensified it. The practice of kangeko, winter training, began in the coldest hours before dawn, usually at 4 in the morning when temperatures were at their lowest. Samurai would go barefoot into the snow, wearing only a thin training kimono, and spend up to 2 hours practicing sword katas, archery, and hand-to-hand combat. Controlled exposure to extreme cold dramatically strengthens the cardiovascular system, increases the production of red blood cells, and develops brown fat, a special type of adipose tissue that generates heat when activated. Samurai who regularly practiced kangeko developed near-supernatural cold resistance. But it wasn't just physical endurance. There was a profound psychological component based on Zen Buddhism. Meditating under icy waterfalls, a practice called takigyo, was considered the ultimate way to train the mind to ignore discomfort. A samurai who could sit in meditation under freezing water for 30 minutes developed mental control that translated into a crucial advantage in battle. Samurai winter clothing was a masterpiece of textile engineering. The haori, the traditional coat, had a specific cut that allowed full arm movement for wielding swords while keeping the torso warm. The wealthiest wore haori lined with badger or fox fur, but most used quilted cotton using a technique called sashiko, where stitching lines create small squares that hold the padding evenly. For their legs, they wore kaya, thick fabric gaiters tied tightly from the shin to the ankle, which protected against snow and improved blood circulation. Their feet received special attention because frozen toes meant loss of balance. Tabi, traditional socks with a separate toe, were made of multiple layers of cotton. Some versions had up to 7 layers. On top of that came waraji, sandals made of woven straw that seem unsuitable for snow, but are actually ingenious. The straw creates excellent traction on ice and allows moisture to evaporate quickly, preventing frozen sweat. The logistics of keeping a samurai army functioning during winter campaigns required meticulous planning, beginning months before the first snow. Each domain maintained special warehouses where non-perishable foods were stockpiled in impressive quantities. Barrels of rice, tons of dried miso, smoked fish, pickled vegetables, everything was carefully cataloged. An average army of 3,000 samurai needed approximately 15 tons of rice per month. Transporting these supplies on snow-covered roads was done using sleds pulled by specially trained oxen. But the samurai developed something even more ingenious. Hyarogan, emergency pills made of ground rice, dried ginger, ginseng, and honey, compacted into pellets. A single hyarogan provided enough energy for several hours of intense activity, and samurai on special missions carried dozens of them. Personal hygiene in winter was another challenge solved in a surprisingly sophisticated way. Daily hot baths were an essential part of Japanese culture, even when snow covered the ground. Each castle had its own burrow, a bathhouse with a large wooden tank heated by a fire underneath. The water was kept at a constant temperature of 45 degrees through continuous heating. Samurai bathed in shifts organized by rank, and this ritual was not just about cleanliness, it was a crucial moment for muscle recovery and deep body warming. Hot water dilates blood vessels, improves circulation, and helps prevent hypothermia during the night. After bathing, they applied camellia oil to their skin and hair, a natural protection against dryness. To keep their teeth clean, they used willow branches chewed until they formed bristles, along with a paste made of sea salt and wood ash. The psychological and spiritual aspect of surviving winter was as important as physical preparation. Samurai saw winter not as an enemy to be avoided, but as a harsh teacher that revealed a warrior's true character. This philosophy came from Zen teachings on Nishun, empty mind, a state where there is no resistance to what is happening, only total acceptance. A samurai trained in this mindset did not fight the cold, he merged with it. Historical texts describe samurai who could sleep in the snow, using only their haori as a blanket, entering such a deep meditative state that their metabolism slowed down and their bodies conserved heat extraordinarily well. Modern studies on Tibetan monks have shown that advanced meditation can increase body temperature by several degrees, even in icy environments. The samurai developed their own versions of these techniques through practices such as zazen and misogi, ritual purification in icy rivers, even in the dead of winter. Specific winter warfare strategies demonstrated how samurai transformed adverse conditions into tactical advantages. Winter military campaigns were rare, but when they occurred, they were brutal and decisive. The clan best prepared for the cold had an overwhelming advantage. Attacks were planned during heavy snowstorms when visibility was almost zero, using detailed knowledge of local terrain. The famous Battle of Mikatagahara in 1572 took place in the dead of winter with sub-zero temperatures, and Takeda Shingen used the snowstorm to mask troop movements, positioning archers on high ground from where they fired arrows that seemed to come from nowhere in the white chaos. Samurai cavalry was particularly effective in snow because native Japanese horses, smaller and more robust, had hooves adapted to uneven terrain and could gallop over compacted snow where infantry would sink. If you enjoyed discovering the amazing secrets of how the samurai conquered the harshest winters and transformed deadly cold into a weapon of war, leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more fascinating facts about these legendary warriors.